Hello, this will be a presentation on the analysis of Tyler the Creator's 911 slash Mr. Lonely. 911 slash Mr. Lonely is the 10th song on Tyler's 4th studio album titled Flower Boy, which released on July the 21st of 2017. It is a popular rap album named one of the best in 2017, and because of that, it received a nomination for the 2018 Grammy Awards. Now, this album is a rap slash hip hop album. And rap music, it's important to talk about the origins of it and what it stands for and what it means culturally and socially. Rap music has its origin from hip-hop culture. So hip-hop culture is the more broad aspect of things here. And rap music is specifically a form of Black American youth cultural expression, and it first emerged from the Bronx neighborhood in New York during the 1970s, and it is argued that this happened as a result of a refusal to assimilate into the more dominant white culture at the time. In her book, Black Noise, American Sociologist Tricia Rose posits that hip-hop came of age in, quote, in the light of America's short-lived federal commitment to black civil rights, unquote. Its ethos accordingly takes shape at a time when black citizens were being forced into a series of these economic, social, and political arrangements, and this drastically amplified their marginalization. Thus, hip-hop culture is a resistive act of the subaltern, and this serves to continually challenge and reshape the dominant culture at the time. As a result, this is one of the reasons why rap music is so constrained within its stereotypical features, because its creation is strictly tied towards resisting and challenging white culture. This is why vulgar language and flaunting of wealth and materialism emerged as stereotypical features of rap music in the first place. However, since then, a majority of hip-hop culture has evolved into a form that is less resistive and more rebellious because of the reduction in marginalization that the black culture experiences as of recent times. Flower Boy is an important album that marks this phase of transition in the hip-hop culture. Compared to his earlier albums, it is less vulgar and more introspective. From a study conducted by Paul Soares, through this graph we see that Flower Boy, as one of his most recent albums, contains the least percentage of bad words compared to previous releases, and this is marked by a smaller brown area. In this album, Tyler talks a lot about his feelings through some of his most used words, such as feel, boredom, lonely, sick, and etc. And the sharp contrast in lyrics is easy to spot when comparing Flower Boy's word cloud with one of his previous works such as Goblin. The importance of Flower Boy. Flower Boy still manages to maintain the excessively materialistic theme that is stereotypical of rap music, but at the same time also subverts this theme by implying that an inner loneliness is what ultimately underlies an outwardly materialistic expression. It is Tyler's intention to break away from this stereotype. This is seen in an interview done with Spin magazine. Tyler talks about his hatred on acknowledging his own cultural stereotypes. The major themes in Flower Boy are represented by cars and a floral imagery. The car has always been a symbol of materialism and consumerism. Often a car is used as a tool to measure wealth, and aside from the use of floral imagery, the use of cars as a symbol is extremely prevalent in his album. These two symbols are often incorporated to represent the two major recurring themes in this album, which are materialism and idealism. These are often made to intertwine with each other, such that this reflects on Tyler's success, fears, anxiety, and emotional strife. The whole album encapsulates and expresses Tyler's transition from a materialistic phase to a more idealistic phase. This is also evident from the album's art cover, which depicts Tyler's sport car off in the distance, while he himself is out of the car and enjoying where he is among the sunflowers and bees. This happens through a gradual realization that Tyler's material possessions are used as a form of escapism, and he becomes conscious of the negative effects that this has on him. 911/Mr. Lonely is the climactic song of the album, as it is the most explicit in describing the subject of loneliness, and it becomes a major point of realization for Tyler about how he uses materialism as a facade to hide from his inner struggles. Structurally, 911/Mr. Lonely as a song consists of two separate parts, that is 911 and Mr. Lonely in that order. Mr. Lonely is the more introspective of the two. Here, Tyler looks inwards towards himself to identify the sources of his problems. Tyler juxtaposes a sad mood and lyrical content with the upbeat nature of the song. The song starts with "Call me, call me, call me." Here, Tyler uses a repetition located at the beginning in order to set the mood for the rest of the song. It is a tragic mood, and it immediately introduces the theme of loneliness towards the listeners. Moreover, he also introduces himself as lonely. While a name is supposed to act as a symbol of identity, Tyler takes advantage of this and uses it to depict the internalization of his feelings of loneliness. He then mentions that it is possible to reach him through dialing 911. This is ironic because 911 is not a number that people can call to reach to him, but instead it is a number that he can call to reach someone, because 911 itself is an emergency hotline for whenever you need to call for certain emergencies, such as, suicidal and depression related tendencies to do stupid things in general. Yeah. So all of these effects provides the song with an introduction that powerfully sets the mood of sadness and vulnerability for the rest of the song. In an attempt to search for someone to fill his empty life, he asks for people to listen to the speaker. Listen to the speaker implies that he is figuratively shouting out, getting desperately in need to find someone to patch up his loneliness. But it is ironic that despite having a voice through the speaker for everyone to hear, not a single person responds, and he still has to feel sad and lonely. This is implied by the allusion to 911 being an emergency hotline. The song continues with the vocals of "ring, ring, ring" in the background. This features an onomatopoeia, the sound of a constant ringing on the telephone, and anxiously waiting for either an answer or a rejection is something that the audience can relate to when hearing this. They can understand that Tyler should be in the same situation as well. Additionally, in the line "Please bang my line, you know I'll answer," this sets up the mood of desperation. "You know I'll answer" implies that he is literally waiting for someone to reach out to him, but to no avail. His desperation that is highlighted in this section is what highlights his insecurities and flaws as he pursues his career. At the end of 911, Tyler explicitly mentions his problems, being the loneliest man alive, and that he is trying to stave them off with false eccentric appearances and facades through his dancing. This statement also mimics the structure of the song itself because it is a dance track with a melody that everyone can bop their head towards, but the deeper lyrical content is dismal. Dancing becomes a metaphor for his facade. When he states that he is running out of moves, he means that his loneliness is slowly overwhelming him and his facade is beginning to wear out. He mentions that he can't groove to the blues, a genre of music which is melancholic, and typically cannot be danced along with. It is also a pun, as the word blues also represents a state of expression that is related to sadness. Thus, the song itself is a real-time, calculated expression of the juxtaposition between a fabricated external presentation of joy that hides within itself an internal sadness and vulnerability. In the song, any mention of material success is immediately followed up by Tyler mentioning his loneliness. Having a sold-out show, and with a wild crowd, his materialistic wealth and success from his career as a musician is being juxtaposed to the lack of a dependable partner/friend in his life. He begins to realize that his materialistic success means nothing in the face of his loneliness. This is reiterated again when he undermines his wealth, which is represented by sport cars and his 5-car garage, a symbol of material wealth and success. The repetition of nothing exaggerates that material objects no longer have any value, while amplifying the importance of having another person in his life. In the second section of the song, Mr. Lonely, Tyler begins to, in a more explicit way, imply that materialistic wealth again means nothing. He realizes that material possessions won't help with his loneliness. The word found is used repeatedly twice, first to highlight how he has obtained a stable standing in his life through his career, but this contrasts with the second use of found, which is used to highlight the lack of a dependable friend or partner in his life. This disproves the fact that he has a stable standing in life, as he earlier mentions, and again, this shows that material possession and success means nothing. Across this song, Tyler subverts the stereotypical theme of materialism in rap music, instead of using it as a form of universal Black cultural expression. He construes this stereotype so that it discusses the personal aspects of his life, such as his loneliness and insecurities. Tyler highlights his use of material possession and false eccentricities as a form of escapism. This verse contains an alliteration of W. Woke up in the burbs with the birds, where you used to come and get me with the swerve. It also has the imagery of nature through diction in words such as birds and burbs, and also through an auditory imagery with the vocals of chirping, which is an onomatopoeia. Repetition is also present in every last word of each line. This accentuates the theme of nature, which is symbolic of the transition of Tyler's worldview into a more idealistic phase. This also leads to the last verse of 911, before moving on to Mr. Lonely. This mirrors the transition of Tyler into a more idealistic phase, since Mr. Lonely is where Tyler becomes increasingly more introspective, even explicitly, and manages to identify the mask of materialism that he is wearing. Just like in 911, Mr. Lonely begins with the repetition, "I can't even lie, I've been lonely as fuck." That plays as a chant of male voices in the background, and again, this sets up the mood as listeners continue the rest of their way through the song. Only this time, Tyler is more acknowledging of his issues, and this is indicated by the phrase, "I can't even lie." This shows that his loneliness is no longer an issue that is deflected by lies and deception, but rather something that needs to be directly faced at head on. Although the theme of loneliness is referenced in 911 and in previous songs of the album, it is only mentioned in passing. Across the rest of Mr. Lonely, this is when Tyler begins a serious attempt at trying to uncover the root of this problem. Here, Tyler formulates a theory wherein he concludes that the loudest person in the room is probably the loneliest one in the room. This is followed by a frontward declaration, "That's me." This shows that Tyler formulates this theory in order to explain his own situation. Tyler is being introspective and through this he begins to acknowledge that his eccentric attitude and extroversion is merely a facade, and it acts as a form of escapism towards his loneliness. After this, Tyler shifts to a third-person point of view. When he says, "Oh my god, that boy there is so fucking lonely," he is, in fact, talking about himself. This shift in point of view gives the listeners a third-person description of Tyler, and it helps with the introspective aspect of the song. He continues with writing songs about these people who do not exist, which is a reference to the creation of this album itself, which is centered around Tyler fantasizing and wishing that a hypothetical person would act as his partner. This ends with "he's such a fucking pony." This is a reference to how he is merely putting up an act to hide his true emotions with his false eccentricities. Here, Tyler continues by acknowledging that his obsession with cars represents a larger issue. He is using it to keep him company. He replaces his need for human contact by personalizing the cars, and also he flat out admits to purchasing things in order to fill the void. Here the distinction between his materialistic desire and his idealistic desire becomes apparent to Tyler, and it becomes clear that materialism alone cannot compensate for his idealistic desires, since at the last line he begins to question whether the things that he has been purchasing bring him joy or not. Tyler uses the aphorism, "There's more fish in the sea," which is typically used to console someone about a lost love, since the fish is metaphorical for a partner. But Tyler mentions that he has never had a goldfish to begin with, so this cliché doesn't apply to him. It doesn't matter how many fish there are in the sea because he's been surrounded by fish all along but never managed to catch one. Tyler finally concludes through the latter reference to 911 that if he doesn't find love soon, his loneliness will develop into a serious emotional emergency. Thus, in Mr. Lonely, Tyler begins to show a full awareness of the situation that he is in, and this marks the start of his transitory phase, a detachment from materialism which is later expanded upon by succeeding songs in the album. Conclusion: 911/Mr. Lonely encapsulates Tyler coming into terms with his own loneliness. He uses this opportunity to subvert the stereotypical theme of materialism into a way that uniquely expresses himself. This is a criticism towards the overly constricted nature and lack of individuality that is stereotypical within rap music. The end.